Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Jay's Fit Down podcast. I am your host, Jaden. I'm here today with Abe Gordon, host of the Abe TL show on 1990 Game Sports Radio in Atlanta here in the ATL. So I'm glad to have him on to talk some Falcons football today and a few other things going around the NFL. Thank you, Abe, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jay, man. It's a crazy time to be talking about Atlanta sports. A lot is going on, a lot to decipher, a lot of reading between the lines, but that makes the coverage all the more interesting. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Yeah. So, like I said, Falcons fire Arthur Smith, much to the delightment of majority of Falcons fans. He's gone. So now Falcons are searching for their new head man. They've interviewed a bunch of people we already know. They've interviewed guys like most recently Jim Harbaugh. They've interviewed, they're trying to interview Ben Johnson. A lot of these candidates that are out here, even Mike Vrabel of others. But the most notable one that's been getting a lot of buzz is Bill Belichick, the former Patriots head coach. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of him as the guy in charge. And there's a lot of different angles and facets to that. I'm not a fan of his for two main reasons. I do think the age is a concern because we're going to find ourselves asking these same questions in 2 years or 3 years. We're going to have to repeat this whole process. I would love to have a guy that I can envision 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, the length of a Tomlin regime, whatever it may be, if goes well. And you're just not going to get that out of Bill Belichick. But I can put that aside. My biggest concern is the question about Bill Belichick and personnel control. I am in favor. I'm not going to argue against Bill Belichick, the coach. I think he's proven enough from that aspect. But I do think there are questions to ask about his history, the last decade of first-round picks and the lack of success since 2012. The decision to roll with Mac Jones as his future quarterback when the Falcons are potentially facing a similar question here. But if you told me that Bill Belichick is coming in here to coach and Terry Fontenot is going to do his job as GM, I'd be a lot more in favor of it than if you tell me Bill Belichick's coming in and all the control is his. That being said, just because he's not my number one choice, prepare, because he very clearly is a heavy favorite to land the job. They've requested a second interview with him, which is expected to take place over the weekend. That is not going to be just him and Arthur Blank. It is going to be a majority of the front office brass, a majority of the decision makers within the franchise. So I'm not personally in love with the idea of Bill Belichick, but I am prepared for that to be the final answer. And that will then circle a bunch of questions about quarterback and offseason and what the plan is moving forward. But if Bill Belichick is just coming here to coach, I would love it. But there's a lot of other decisions it seems like he may be making that I'm not necessarily in favor of.
No, well said, man. I agree. Because, you look at him, realistically, his timeline, if he were, it's probably within the next 3 years. And then, like you said, we'd be repeating this again. And I just don't think that's good for this team to continuously go through this every 3 or 4. You need continuity to be a successful franchise. And I think the Falcons finally are at a spot right now where they have talent on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. Now you just need to get some continuity within the franchise as a whole, because that has an impact on the culture and the morale of the team. And you keep changing coaches every couple of years. It's like that's not going to stick, and you're not going to go where you want to go, and that's ultimately to Super Bowl and win one. So longevity wise, I don't like that move. I don't want Bill here. I don't.
Yeah, the other thing is all right, so Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. No one's trying to argue against that. No one's trying to take that away from him.
Right.
But at the same time, did anyone know who Bobby Slowick was a year ago? Unless you knew of his history with the Commanders, probably not. The point is, whether it's Belichick or Slowick or whomever you want it to be, if you don't get that quarterback right, it doesn't matter if you're the greatest coach of all time. Bill Belichick is drafting 3 overall, or his old team, as it were, is drafting 3 overall for a reason. They didn't have a quarterback to lead their offense this year. That's the biggest answer either way, because whether it's Belichick or Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, you can name Raheem Morris, you can name whatever candidate you want it to be. if you're stuck with like the quality of Desmond Ridder as your starting quarterback, you're not winning 11 games. So the head coach is only one aspect of this. If you don't get that quarterback right, whether it's in the draft or a veteran or a trade or whatever, doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to coach this team to a Super Bowl without that position.
Yeah, absolutely. Super Bowl winning teams have quarterbacks. It's just the fact of the matter. You can't get anywhere without a quarterback, and especially in today's NFL. Even if your defense is super good, you need a quarterback, and so teams have proved that over and over again. And the Falcons, like you said, I mean, no matter who's the coach, if Desmond Ridder is still trying out there, turning the ball over every single game, and just playing, mediocre football, you're not going to go anywhere. So they're going to have to address that. So going off of that note, I guess it depends on who's the new head coach. But what do you think they're going to do with the quarterback position?
I'm going to be honest. If you had asked me a couple days ago, I would have gone in a different direction. I don't think the Bears are trading out of one anymore. I think they're going to end up taking Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. I don't think Kirk Cousins is leaving Minnesota. I really don't. I think he's going to sign a team-friendly deal there. He made some interesting comments about at this stage of his career, it's not about the money anymore. It's about a couple other aspects. And so I think he's going to stay there if they're willing. They don't have to break the bank, but they can't lowball him either. I really do think that trading for Justin Fields is becoming a much more viable option, which I did not think was the case when the Bears announced they were going to retain Matt Eberflus for another season. But it just feels like it's trending towards that. And so I would say that they're going to go acquire Justin Fields. That being said, I think you've got to find a way to do that without giving up the number 8 overall pick. And that's the key here. I don't know if Fields is an option if it's for the 8th overall pick, but a variety of second-round picks or whatever it may be, I would be in favor of that. I really would. Even more so, and I know this, you kind of roll it out, even more so if you have a younger, offensive-minded head coach as opposed to a Belichick or maybe even a Vrabel, as it may be.
Yeah. I mean, one thing's for sure, if you're the team, you know that you cannot roll to 2024 with Desmond Ridder as your starting quarterback.
No.
You can't. I mean, I don't see any.
That's not happening. You don't even have to discuss it. It's literally not an option. It's not happening.
I hope not, because it's just can't happen. So now that begs the question: do we go for Fields, or do you draft one? Do you get a guy later on? Do you try to go up and get a guy like Daniels or Penix or somebody like that? That's another thing too. People are talking about. Did you see them possibly taking one in the draft?
The thing about the draft is if you're going to take a quarterback from where the Falcons are, you have to trade to number 1. Like number 2 and 3 are not trading their picks. Like Washington and New England are sticking and taking quarterbacks. That's almost a lock. Maybe you could trade to 4, but if at that point you're taking QB4. Like if you stay at 8, there's a real likelihood that you're taking the 5th best quarterback in the NFL draft with the 8th overall pick. Like that can't happen either. You're talking about J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Pratt out of Tulane. That's not a real option. So if you take quarterback in the draft, you have to trade up. Unless you take a quarterback later down the road and bring in a veteran and try and combo something. But that doesn't, if that's the plan, you're not winning this year or in the future. So if you're asking me, if you're comfortable with Michael Penix, who's most likely QB4, maybe you can trade to 4 or even to 5 or whatever. But I think if you're going to go get a quarterback in the draft, you have to trade up to 1. And whether it's Drake May or Caleb, however you grade him out, take that guy. There's no value in taking quarterback at 8.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, it also depends on who the head coach will be. If it's a young guy like Ben Johnson or Bobby Slower type of guy, then you're more likely going to want to get a quarterback in the draft. Because the combo, at the same time though, the combo thing, we tried it with Ridder and Mariota, that didn't work. So that's the only thing. It's I don't know. Again, it all depends on who the head coach will be, but more likely than not, I can see them taking one, even if it's later, really late. So we'll see. Um, but
Yeah, the real wild card in all this is oddly enough Russell Wilson. And I know you can make your jokes about Atlanta and future, and he would never play here and that sort of nonsense. But if the Broncos do end up cutting him as a June 1st designation, and he does become a free agent, especially with a veteran head coach, I do think on a team-friendly deal he does become a possibility. But there's a lot of ducks that would have to line up for that to even happen. I just think it's more likely that Justin Fields is probably a target, and if you can keep your 8th pick, you find a way to get that done.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I wouldn't be opposed to Fields being here, and I think a coach like a Johnson or a Slowick could get it out of him, because you've seen spurts of it. He got better last year, this past season. He got better, in certain aspects. I mean, he ripped us up when we played them. So I'm interested to see what they do there. But all that being said, who do you think is the best candidate for the Falcons to hire as a new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, if I were making the pick, it would be Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson for a couple reasons. And I talked about this on 92.9 The Game the other night. To me, there are 3 direct, tangible reasons that he could come to the Atlanta Falcons and have success pretty quickly. The first off, and the quarterback obviously is the answer there, but Jared Goff is not the greatest quarterback in the NFL. I'm not trying to insult Jared Goff. He is a mid-tier quarterback, and I got a lot of people on me for calling him mid-tier, but he's not a top 10 quarterback in the league. Like, by default, that would be top tier. Like, anywhere after that is mid-tier unless you're Desmond Ridder and bottom tier. So he is a mid-tier quarterback that has won playoff games and is a Pro Bowl quality season. So that would be one. I think he can get the best out of guys that are not necessarily the most talented guy in the league. So start there. You get Sam Laporta, a guy that should have been an All-Pro this year, certainly a Pro Bowler, led the league in touchdowns from the tight end position with 10. He's a late round pick, I think 5th rounder at the tight end position in his rookie year. And you see what Ben Johnson was able to do with him. So unravel that, pull on that thread. What could he possibly do with Kyle Pitts and the talent that he has? And then the other aspect of this, to me, is the Lions, in my opinion, had the most successful display of how to use a 2 running back system. And that's David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. What do we hope to have here in Atlanta? Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. And there aren't too many differences between those two, because you can argue like a 2 running back system worked in Miami with Mostert and Devin Achane, but it's a different usage. Those 2 guys are not necessarily humongously different backs. So I think his ability to institute a 2 running back system translates. And then the other thing, which I didn't talk a ton about on my show, is Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London are not the same type of receiver. I think we have to admit that.
Yeah.
But he found ways to feature Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, we had games where you're like, is Drake London playing? Like, why aren't we throwing to him? Like, it's just not going to be a situation where you just don't throw to your number 1 receiver. It would be in different uses, different formations, different routes. But Ben Johnson would at least get him targets, and that can lead to some big games. So that would be my choice. But I certainly understand a number of different options that would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of options you could say that would logically work. I don't think the Belichick is one of them. But there's a couple different options. You could go with if you're the Falcons. So, but I think realistically, Ben Johnson gives you the best chance to win. And he's coming here from that, from the Lions, and bringing that kind of mentality and just the culture, man. I think it will help. It helps franchises, and we saw with the Lions. I mean, what they were able to do. And offensively, you have to be able to use your weapons. You have to be able to get the ball to your number 1 receiver. Your tight end that you drafted 4th overall. You got to be able to use him and not, Kyle Pitts should not only have like 3 touchdowns in a season. That should not happen. I just don't understand, So, but that's Arthur Smith for you, so we know how that is. But we don't have to worry about that anymore, hopefully. But moving on to our next segment, man. What's your predictions, man, for the divisional round? Who you got? How you think that's going to shape out?
Yeah, it's a couple of interesting games, and I'm just going to go in terms of the order, the schedule of order. I'm interested to see Baltimore against C.J. Stroud in that Houston passing attack. Baltimore is one of the best pass rush teams in the NFL. The Ravens, I don't know if they ended up leading the league in sacks, but I know towards the later stage of the season, they were in first place in that category. And so you've got a team and a quarterback that likes to drop back and throw the ball. I don't know if that's a great matchup. Then again, neither is like Devin Singletary against the Ravens. So from the defensive aspect, I like the Ravens there. But they've got to get off to a better start. They've had some slow starts in playoff games under Lamar Jackson. They had a week off, so you do start to ask questions about rest versus rust. Some of the guys even sat out week 18 as well, or were limited or only played part-time in week 18. So we'll see how quickly they can get off to a start. But, a home game, I just think the pass rush wins there. And so I do like Baltimore to get by the Texans in that one. Great story for Jordan Love, but the Niners are too good. I think they're the best team in the NFL. I think they're winning the Super Bowl. Similar to Baltimore, outstanding pass rush. And they've been pretty good against the run, although they can be had a little bit. But their offense is so tuned up, and they've had the week off. Christian McCaffrey's a full go in practice. I just think there's too much firepower on offense, but you add in the defense and the ability to create turnovers. That Saturday night game, I think, goes to San Francisco. Tampa Bay and Detroit is a really interesting one. I think Sunday has got a couple of toss-ups, but I like the way Baker Mayfield is trending. I'm a big fan of Baker Mayfield. Like I worked and lived in Cleveland for a couple of years. I just really like Baker Mayfield. I think he's a gamer. I think he's an outstanding leader. Look, he doesn't have the top tier arm talent to really survive as an elite quarterback in the NFL. But he is a gamer, and I think his players play for him. He trusts his teammates, which I think is massively important. And so I'm not suggesting that they're the better team. I think Detroit is an outstanding squad. But I kind of like the way Tampa Bay is playing. I think this one's going to be interesting. I think Detroit is going to have to use, and I know we talked about Ben Johnson and what they do on offense. They're going to have to use the run game. Tampa is. And I know they're not the most dynamic run game with Rachaad White, but he's got to tune it up a little bit and take some pressure. Aiden Hutchinson has had a great second half to this season. And Baker Mayfield's not the greatest at eluding the pass rush. So going to be very interesting there. I like Detroit to be able to do a couple things, though. And Tampa Bay's going to have to score again. I don't think they're winning this one 17-10, 17-14. Detroit's going to score, so Tampa Bay's going to have to match them. Ultimately, I think the home team wins. I do think Detroit puts enough points on the board to get by the Bucs, but it's an interesting matchup. And then we've got the final game of the weekend, the Chiefs and the Bills, the Mahomes and Josh Allen, the new age Manning and Brady, if you will. It's been a different year for Kansas City. I think we all have to admit that. They have not been able to do offensively what we are used to be watching them do. And despite having Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, I just don't think that there's enough offense right now to do and match up with what the Bills are doing. I think Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox as a tight end duo have been outstanding for Josh Allen, who keeps finding Stephon Diggs as well. And then Allen just physically, what do you have, like 44 touchdowns this season, passing and throwing. I actually think that in Patrick Mahomes' first playoff road game, he heads home a loser. It's just, I don't think their offense has been there enough consistently. And the Bills, who at one point were 6-6, have been outstanding the past 10 weeks of the season. And I think they continue that and head to the AFC title game. So I'm going to take, I guess by default, I did take all four home teams. But that's just how I see it playing out, man.
No, that's a good. That I mean, usually when you're at home in the playoffs, it's hard to lose. Um, you know, that's just how it goes. Home field advantage is very important. That's why the teams try to get these high seeds so they can get
Yeah.
this home field advantage because it is super important. Plays a huge role. You saw Detroit was rocking on Sunday night, and how that goes. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much had the same picks, man. I think mine's gonna win. I think the Ravens are gonna win. I mean, and I think the 49ers are gonna win. But I am impressed with how C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love have played in these playoffs in their first time playing in the postseason. So I'm impressed with that.
No doubt.
I think we're getting the Ravens Niners Super Bowl, man. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, it feels that way, but I will say this: the Bills. I wouldn't look past the Bills right now. The way that they're playing, I think they're a pretty good matchup offensively against the Ravens. Josh Allen doesn't hold on to the ball too long. He can be an imposing runner. Yeah, I mean, if it plays itself out that way, I could see in the AFC title game the Bills actually getting ahead of that. But like I said, I think the 49ers are the best team in the NFL. I would pick them to win it all. Now I'd pick them in week 1, at week 8, at week 15. There's at no point have I ever thought they were not the best team in the NFL, even when the Eagles were 10-1. So the Ravens are good, the Bills are good, but I'll still take Niners when all's said and done.
All right, yeah. Okay, that's a good pick. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. Like you said, Sunday's got some toss ups.
Yeah.
It can go either way.
Yeah.
On those games. So I'm really intrigued to see how that plays out. But Abe, that is going to pretty much wrap us up for today's podcast, man. I appreciate you joining in, giving us your insight there, Coach Falcons football and covering, and letting us know about the coaching search and your thoughts on that. So we appreciate your time coming on Jace with Down.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I do appreciate it. I think very early next week we're going to have a new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think this process is going to be as long as some other searches. So I'm certainly anxious. Look, football's going to take up a lot of the weekend, but it's going to continue on the other side come Monday, Tuesday. We'll see what happens. But I appreciate you having me on, man. Thanks so much.
Of course, man. No problem. And you guys make sure you check out Abe's show there, 1990 Game. He does great work over there on that station. They all do. And you can check us out here on Jay's Been Down. Subscribe to our channel. There's your dog. And subscribe to our channel on Jay's Been Down on YouTube and other podcast platforms. But thank you, Abe. We will see you next time.